Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about DC United in the Moving Forward series episode. And what's kind of interesting about DC United is that they're the only team in MLS right now that you can truly say that they are in off-season mode. Their 2023 MLS regular season has come to an end because they're the only team that is not going to be part of Decision Day because of the odd number that we have in terms of teams, and that obviously that is going to be fixed once San Diego does come into the league. But it's obviously kind of a little bit of a nuance, the fact that we have unfortunately one team that's not going to be involved in decision day, and DC United is that team. What's even more weird is that they're currently ninth in the Eastern Conference, and that they're currently in the last spot in the playoffs, and they would have made it to the playoffs if the season ended and there was no decision day whatsoever, which I'm pretty sure DC is praying to Don Gabbard that of course is the case, but unfortunately it is not meant to be. We are still going to get decision day. We are still also going to get games coming up soon, and that no matter what kind of scenarios that's going to happen in decision day, DC is still going to be eliminated and gonna get passed by the teams that is below them. So yeah, again, I think that's the first time I've ever seen a team that has an E next to their name, which stands for eliminated, and they're above the standing. So I guess maybe that's kind of something that DC fans will take a pride that hey, we're the first team to get eliminated, despite the fact that we're currently above the red line right now. But nevertheless, this season so far they have a 10-10-14 record. Well, it's actually not this season. It's their season is done. Their final record is 10-10-14, and they finished with 40 points. They scored 45 goals this season. They've allowed 49 goals with goal differential of -4. So it's kind of almost the around the right spot of why they're in ninth place in the standings. And well, they're not currently ninth. Well, they're currently ninth in the Eastern Conference right now, but that's gonna change. They're probably gonna finish around 10th and 11th, depending on how the decision date resort goes. Now, in terms of their current head coach and current GM, another interesting thing about them is that it's both vacant right now. They don't have a head coach right now because just hours after they finished the final game of the season, after they won against NYCFC, but unfortunately they were eliminated from playoff contention. It was announced that Wayne Rooney decided to step down as the head coach of DC United, and literally just a day ago, and just happened yesterday. He went back to England and now becoming the new head coach of Birmingham City. So yeah, that didn't take long for Wayne Rooney to find himself a head coaching job, or a managerial job, as they say, in England. And that I think, I mean, I didn't expect him to basically get a new job even when the season isn't over in MLS. And also the current GM is also vacant. They technically have not had a GM in this team ever since they fired Lucio Rushton back in 2022. I mean, Wayne Rooney basically was the GM of this team. He basically was given unlimited power in terms of the decision making and the signings that to construct a team that hopefully gets back to the playoffs. And unfortunately, it did not work out. Now, in terms of the top goal scored of this team, so Christian Benteke leads the team with 14 goals, and there were points where he was going for the golden boot. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But still, for a guy that there was a lot of expectation that's put on him to be that goal scorer and be that number nine for this DC team, he definitely have to deliver this season. I mean, yes, there's been times where there's been some frustrating misses that Christian Benteke has had, but that's kind of his career in a whole. Throughout his career, he's always known to be a dangerous number nine, especially in the air, because he's very good in the air. With a lot of the goals that he scored this season came from headers. But throughout his career, the most frustrating thing, and the thing that kind of holds back Christian Benteke of being one of the best number nine in the world, is the fact that he's also had some bad misses, and aren't able to show that clinical finisher that a number nine needs to be. Now, at number two, you got Taxi Funtas with 6 goals, followed by Teku DiPietro with 5 goals, Mateus Click with 4 goals, and Chris Durkin finish the top 5 goals scored with 3 goals. Now, the top assist leader, their main assist contributor, is Mateus Click with 9 assists. I mean, between both Benteke and Click, both of their high earning and their DP, both of them actually produce, which again, as I'll mention, of one of the things that went right, at least for DC, is that at least they got the best out of their designated player, which is something I don't think I get to say a lot with teams. Even with some of the better team in MLS, getting the best out of your DP usually is not always the case, especially for teams that are struggling or kind of in the middle of the road. So the fact that both of their DP turns out to be a hit, I mean that's definitely something you is considered an accomplishment, especially DC has had a lot of flops in terms of some of their DP signings lately. Then you got Juan with 6 assists, followed by Christian Benteke with 4 assists, Teku Tibietro with 3 assists, and Victor Paulson finished with 3 assists as the top 5 assist leader. Now, looking at the last 5 seasons, well, yeah, for DC, they're still trying to make it to the playoffs for the first time since 2019. That's of course has to wait until next season, but at least this year, they definitely show some improvement compared to last season. I mean, honestly, after what happened last season, it's a very low floor and a low see in terms of them trying to one up what they did last season. I mean, this season they finished 10, 10, and 14 with 40 points. Last season was one of the worst season in DC United history. A 7-6 and 21 record and finished with 27 points. They won the Wooden Spoon that year, and unfortunately, the last time that they won the Wooden Spoon besides 2022, they won the U.S. Open Cup. They didn't win the U.S. Open Cup in 2022, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, remember that 2013 season when DC won the Wooden Spoon, but they still won the U.S. Open Cup. Well, that was because mainly they were so focused on the U.S. Open Cup that was probably one of the few times where we see a team that are just absolutely putting all their eggs in their basket in the U.S. Open Cup, and it actually turns out to work well. We've seen teams that have done that, and unfortunately that sometimes that didn't work out for them. But in 2021, they finished 8th with a 14-5 and 15 record and finished with 47 points. They were so close that year from making the playoffs. I mean, they did everything they could on decision day. I remember that year to make it to the playoffs, but they fall short in the end. And then in the COVID shortened season, it was not a great season for DC. They finished 13 with a 5, 6, and 12 record, and they finished with 21 points. And then in 2019, this was the last time that they made it to the playoffs. They finished fifth in the standings with 13, 11, and 10 record and finished with 50 points. But I'm pretty sure DC fans would not want to remember that playoff appearance that they had in the hands of Toronto, where yeah, that was kind of a disastrous playoff appearance where they lost pretty badly in the playoffs, and I still remember that was the game where I think DC might be the first team to concede 4 goals in extra time in an MLS game. Now, in terms of the average attendance, 17,540, which is good for 26 in the league. I mean, the attendance wise, I don't blame the fact that it hasn't been good. I mean, I know DC has finally got a new stadium, and you think that the attendance would be better than when they are at RFK, and I think the attendance is still better than doing their time at RFK. But as it is kind of the case when you have that stadium that is built and that kind of new car smell, of course the attendance is going to be good. But as the year goes along and the numerous losing that's going on, then you don't really have that new car smell and that new stadium boost in terms of the attendance, and we're starting to see it now. I mean, as much as Audi Field is definitely one of the best soccer specific stadium in the league, because of the fact that this team hasn't really won a lot. I mean, there is not a big surprise that DC fans hasn't really been wanted to show up because the product that it's been producing has been mediocre at best. Now, in terms of MVP for this DC team, it's got to be Christian Benteke. I mean, I would say it's between Benteke and Matthias Clegg. I would say Benteke because again, this is a guy that he had a lot of expectation. He has to live up to. I mean, after this season, and there was a lot of question of, well, is he gonna be? Can he be like the Christian Benteke of the old and be a lethal goal scorer? Well, the lethal part probably isn't there because there are times where he missed some big chances, but he's definitely a guy that produced at least 10 plus goal and almost hit 15 goals, and I think he's definitely one of the better number 9 in the league, especially in the air. And again, it's no surprise that this season there's been a lot of time when DC decide to pump those ball into the air. You got to watch out for Christian Benteke because he is a guy that will always be in the right place, right time to head that one in. He's a very big aerial threat, probably one of the best aerial threat number 9 in the league, and maybe even the best, I would say. And yeah, no doubt that I think he deserved to be the MVP. Now the disappointment, I mean, there were some players that I could pick as disappointment. I was actually thinking about picking Tyler Miller, but I decided that, you know what, as bad as Tyler Miller has to a point where he got bench, I do think that it's combination of Tyler Miller kind of regressed really badly ever since he left Minnesota, and the fact that Wayne Rooney kind of ruined him by decided to play him as a sweeper keeper, even though Tyler Miller is not a sweeper keeper. I mean, I don't even know why exactly he decided to do that. I don't know. Did he decide to watch like the last season when he was with Minnesota? Where I remember in one of the game when Tyler Miller replaced Dane Sinclair, he Tyler Miller was actually acting as a sweeper keeper, and I think that was the game. I actually was there in that game. I was at Rio Tinto Stadium, or that's what it would used to call an RSL home. And in that game that Minnesota played against RSL, which yeah, that didn't go so well. But you know, to make matters worse, Dane Sinclair was injured in that game. Tyler Miller was coming in, and I saw Tyler Miller was acting as a sweeper keeper. Now, I don't know exactly if that's kind of what he decided to do, and that maybe Wayne Rooney saw that and say, "Hey, let's do that with him," because I mean, throughout his career, Tyler Miller has never been as a sweeper keeper, and I don't know why exactly Wayne Rooney decided to implement him like that, and it obviously didn't work out in one bit. I mean, we see some of the worst goalkeeping, however, this season came from DC United, and it has came from Tyler Miller because of that. But as much as I could easily chose that, I gotta go with Taxi Funtas. I mean, it's not even a discussion of Taxi Funtas being the biggest disappointment, and it's gonna go down as one of the biggest disappointment, one of the biggest busts in MLS. And it's not because of the fact that he's bad or anything. It's the racial allegation. I mean, you know the old saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, yeah, you're probably going to be exit out of the door. And right now, Taxi Funtas, after this season, the second time he's got a racial allegation, and especially, it's not just any racial allegation. It was on his own teammate. Like that's the last straw every time, and it's not surprised that he eventually was shown the door because of that. And that honestly, what a waste that we saw in that. I mean, I think Taxi Funtas, the last player that I would say that has great potential to be a great MLS player, but it was ruined because of off the field situation. Probably was Brian Fernandez. Where remember he came to the Portland Timbers, he was a lethal goal scorer, but then he had some problem off the field in terms of drugs and substance abuse. And eventually the Timbers had to terminate his contract. And it's kind of the same case for Taxi Funtas. I mean, during the time when he came into the league, he lived up to that number 9 kind of tag. Now, obviously, he didn't get as much minutes this season because, you know, the system that Wayne Rooney runs doesn't really use a two striker system, and Benteke basically occupies that spot. But still, even his limited minutes, Funtas still score those goals. And again, it's just unfortunate how it ended up like it is. And that again, you know, uh, if you do that for like the first time, it's already kind of unforgettable. But if you do it for the second time because of a racial allegation, and actually there's evidence that he actually racially abused one of his teammates, yeah, you're basically gonna be shown the door every single time. Now, young player to watch. There's definitely a couple of good young players that this DC team has had. I mean, a lot of people don't know, but there's definitely some young guys that I think could turns out to be well. DC has always been a team that I've seen they have produced some good young talent before, and one of the guys that I'm definitely watching out for is Ted Pietro. In fact, he could be a guy that could be on the U.S. men's national team radar because you know this season he kind of came out of nowhere. Like this is a kid that I don't think you probably heard of him. Though you know if you follow the USL Championship very closely, he was definitely a stud doing his time with Loudoun United. But he came onto the stage, and yeah, he turns out to had a really good rookie season to a point where you know when you look at the list of MLS made with 22 under 22, I think Ted Pietro was one of those player because again he's a very talented kind of player, especially a very good dribbler too. He's always known to be a good dribbler. Now obviously the thing that he might needs to work on is about uh that final ball product and be able to break lines. Though I think as the season goes along, we're starting to see that start to progress in his games too, and that if he can have that, and also the fact that he's a very good dribbler and he does a good job in terms of beating you off a dribbler, this is a guy that I think could have some U.S. men's national team kind of future in the near future if he can continue to develop. Now, what went right for this DC team? Well, they got production off of their two DP player. Like I said, that's something you rarely see happen where both of the designated players turns out to be a hit for a team that is not doing very well in the league. They're a much more watchable team this season. I mean, there's been some very bad DC team and some very boring DC team. I mean, last season was kind of one of them, but this season I think they're definitely more watchable, and it's mainly due to the tactics that Wayne Rooney has implemented. Definitely made it a little bit more watchable. They're not just kind of bunker all the time. They're actually willing to attack at times this season. And then, as I mentioned, there's some very good young talent on the wing. So, as I mentioned, DiPietro is definitely one of those guys. But another guy that I want to mention, Christian Fletcher and Jackson Hopkins, both of their center backs, they could definitely thrust in to the road soon and start to get some valuable minutes. Consider defense is definitely one of the area that they might be looking on if they in the transfer window if they decide to not rely on those two young talent to be there. But yeah, again, this DC team, people don't know they do produce some really good talented players too, and that I do think that we're gonna start to see some of them come through, do well in the team, and eventually gonna be sell off for a big amount of money. Now, what went wrong for this DC team? Inconsistency. And honestly, I've said this in the beginning of the season, and it turns out to be literally true. It's kind of a boom and bust kind of team with how weirdly structured this team is. I mean, this year, as much as I thought last season they were going for they need to go for a rebuild. They decided to kind of retool a little bit, and with all the retool that they've done, I mean, it's been kind of like, well, if this team is gonna make the playoffs, then most of the pieces gonna have to hit, and it has to be a boon. If not, it's gonna be another disastrous season. What turns out, it kind of it's a combination. I mean, there was the boom part with Christian Benteke and Mateus Klick, and then there also are some of the bust part like Tyler Miller and even Pedro Santos didn't quite worked out with this team. And when you add that together, I mean, it's no surprise the inconsistency kind of haunt them throughout the season. Goalkeeping continue to be a problem. So this is a team that they still have not truly replaced Bill Hamid, and Tyler Miller came in again. I don't know why exactly did Wayne Rooney decided to implement him as a sweeper keeper, and that it turns out to be an absolute disastrous to a point where Alex Bono basically replaced him in that spot. And I will say that Alex Bono has played well down the stretch, but I don't think he's a long term solution. I think that's going to be something that DC might be looking in the future to upgrade. And then of course the Taxi Fuentes situation. I already mentioned that as one of the things that went wrong. Now moving forward for this DC team, obviously they need a new head coach and a GM. I mean, if you it's like every season that of course is kind of the case, but it seems like it's once again the case. And that's kind of the thing that is going to frustrate a lot of DC fans to a point where I'm not surprised that this fan base does not trust the front office in terms of the head coaching that the hiring or the GM, because most of the higher up personnel that have made these decisions have got it wrong repeatedly to a point where it's no surprise that the fans have want their heads too. So we'll see whether if that's going to change too before they make a new decision in terms of who's going to be the next head coach and the GM of this team. They need a number 10 badly. Again, I think this season, as much as Mateus Klick is a good producer, he's kind of like a deep line kind of playmaker, which when you have a deep line playmaker, that's definitely a good thing. But ideally, you want to have a creative number 10 kind of player. I mean, this is a league that it definitely feeds off of having a good number 10, and I think that's going to be something that they need. Especially, I feel like Benteke could definitely be a more lethal goal scoring, and they can be much better on the attack than they are right now. And this is a pretty good attack in my opinion, but they could be a much better attacker if they do have that number 10. And the good news is they do have a DP slot open, so I won't be surprised they might be using that on a number 10, or even a young DP number 10 that they might be looking for in the future. And then, of course, maybe a new goalkeeper, improve the central defense and fullback. So, again, the goalkeeping situation, depending on if they really do trust Alex Bono. And as I said, I think Bono has performed relatively well to a point where he started to kind of find his old form that he has with TFC a couple of years ago. But I still don't think that that's a long-term solution. Maybe they need to look in for another goalkeeper. Improve the central defense. I mean, the defense that they have, depending on if they are going to start to move on to some of those veteran player like Pines and Birnbaum, and maybe bring in some new player, or even trust their youth, as I mentioned, with two of their young talent are both playing in that center back role. They might implement there, and they don't really need to sign players. And then, of course, the fullback situation again. They still haven't replaced or Julian Gresso there ever since they sold him this summer, which was a very surprise kind of move. I didn't think that they were going to move on from or actually I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Vancouver here. They already move on from Julian Gresso a couple of years ago. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised they haven't really found a replacement for that, but they definitely need to this off season. And then, of course, I think the last thing that's moved forward for this team is there going to be another tear down that is implemented. Again, that all depends on if what the vision of this new head coach and GM is going to be. Like, usually when you bring a new head coach and GM, you would assume that there should be a tear down that is happening, because they have a different vision of what this team is. But if the new GM or the new head coach that they bring thinks that they can work with this team and find a way to kind of improve this team, but also keep the team where it is, and continue to make improvement to a point where they can finally make the playoffs for the first time in 2019. Another teardown maybe is not possibility. And again, the thing about teardown is the fact that you don't want to do it all the time. You don't want to do it almost every so our years, and we've been seeing for this DC team in the last couple of years where they have done that teardown, and it hasn't really got them anywhere. And that, again, at the end of the day, stability is definitely a key. And I wonder, with this new head coach and GM, would they really want to go for the stability path where, hey, we do have a good enough roster to make it to the playoffs. All we need is to improve them, and then we can make that step of finally be making the playoffs, and maybe be a playoff contender in the near future. But there you have it. That is pretty much it, looking at DC United. And as always, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video. If you're a DC fan, what's your MVP disappointment, young player to watch? What went right? What went wrong? And most importantly, moving forward, how is this team going to look in the future? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.